I would say that generally every pastor knows what their job is on the weekends.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday!
As do those rebellious heretics whose church meets on Saturdays. In most ways, the weekend is the easiest part. It's the other stuff during the week that tends to be confusing. So what can help with that? Today, we're going to talk about the 5 reasons that a pastor needs a job description.
When I was a little boy in pastor school, nobody was happy. I had high blood pressure. And I started crying. Daddy told me to meet him in front of the liquor store.
I am James Holland, and I am first going to ask you to leave a comment and tell us, do you have a job description? And if so, what specifically is in it? Is it helpful or is it confusing? And along with the 5 reasons, at the end, I'm going to give you just a little tidbit that I found always helpful. I think the general public, and even people who go to church, look at a pastor and think their job is pretty simple. You preach, you pray for people, and you visit the sick.
Oh, is that all?
In the real world, however, as a church grows, the pastor's job gets more and more complicated, and their tasks become more difficult to accomplish successfully. There seems to be more and more minutia that the pastor needs to do.
The boss is coming. Look busy.
A lot of Empire stuff
Oh,
to do.
Empire
Getting
stuff.
Empire stuff done.
Busy
All
with
done
Empire
with this
stuff.
Empire
This
stuff.
Empire
Yes,
stuff
this
looks
is
good.
Empire stuff.
Yes, I think we're done with this Empire.
And many pastors end up taking on way too much. And before we talk about the specifics of why you need a job description, we need to talk about some of the attitudes and misperceptions that get us in over our head. There's the very noble but also very dangerous idea of we must do whatever it takes. There's that noble but sort of arrogant mindset that if I don't do it, nobody else will, or nobody else can. A lot of pastors just don't know how to delegate. Pastors don't feel like they have the right or the ability to say no. Sometimes there's a kind of a guilt thing that, well, the church is paying me. I have to give pretty much everything about me to get stuff done. Sadly, many times pastors just don't get the spiritual or relational benefits that they themselves provide for their congregation. Let's face it, we all have limitations, but for some reason, a lot of pastors end up working outside of their giftings. Whether we like to say it or not, whether we like to admit it or not, many churches expect their paid pastor to work their asses off. And I've seen pastors who have a certain type of martyr complex. I'm a servant of God, so I shouldn't get the luxury of being spiritually or relationally cared for. And there's the one that no one will admit to, but it certainly happens, where God cannot do it without me. And all of those thoughts combine together and a pastor can lose their mind.
Sorry, I don't want you to freak out.
I'm freaking out. I am freaking out.
They have anxiety. Their families take the brunt of their pain. They burn out, they disappear, and whew, they're gone.
Man up and vanished like a fart in the wind.
At some point in the 90s or the 2000s, churches took on more of a business model, a structural organizational model, using some of the tools that businesses use. Many of those tools were helpful in ministry. Many of those tools were not. So obviously, one that I think is very beneficial is the job description. And here's why. I've seen the lack of a clear job description lead to failure, giving up, burning out, and quitting. But here's one thing I've noticed. In a business world, you get a job description to tell you what to do, sometimes step by step. I've noticed in ministry, though, a lot of times pastors know what to do, and that's not the issue. Pastors have difficulty with prioritizing, managing time, and having no accountability. What this does is it creates a situation where a job description can actually be more helpful in saying what not to do than saying what to do. Sometimes pastors are running themselves ragged and need to be reined in, and a job description can do that. Lacking a job description can bolster the pain and the chaos of decision making. Number 1, first reason you need a job description. Clarity.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone.
A job description should state clearly, or pretty clearly, what are the priorities of the pastor and or staff member. And then the pastor can take those priorities and manage himself or herself using the job description as guardrails. It brings into focus what they can or can't say no to, what they can give away or what they can ignore. B, it keeps the pastor working in their sweet spot, or their wheelhouse, or their best lane, their most effective gear, their favorite bathroom. Can we finally stop laboring under the delusion that a pastor should be or is suited to every type of role, position, and responsibility in a church? The job description should identify what the pastor is good at, as well as what he or she is really bad at, and then keep them in their sweet spot. The reason this is important is the pastor can balance herself out by bringing in other people who are good at the things that she is not. It keeps the leadership at peak performance, everyone working effectively in their own area of gifting. In any job description that I have, it must state clearly that I should not be allowed to do hospital visitation. I am just really so awkward at that. That's just not my gift. And I need to raise up people who can do that to balance out the gifts that I have. And that should be in a job description. Q, replication. There's nothing new under the sun, and I'm sure that I was not the first person to do this, but in almost every job description that I've created for other people, I have included a requirement that they raise up someone to do what they're doing, to replicate themselves.
And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust them to reliable men who will also be qualified to teach others.
Why? Pastors don't like to face the fact that they are not immortal. And we know that there's only really one immortal person. And like most people, pastors don't like to imagine anything happening to them. But if something does, who's going to step in and do what the pastor does without missing a beat? If you are a pastor and you have no backup plan for if something happens to you, you're missing an element of your job. Number D, a job description creates boundaries. Pastors are really terrible at boundaries. The job description should spell out the boundaries, and therefore the pastor knows what he or she can say no to. It explains what they can put aside for now and, go home and watch Netflix and relax. And ideally, it would clearly state things about vacation, Sabbath, sabbatical, time off, attending conferences. Someone, even if it's a piece of paper, needs to let the pastor know where not to tread. Number 5, accountability. A properly prepared and well thought out job description will give measurements by which you can be evaluated. Not necessarily criticized, but evaluated. How else do you know if you're doing a good job? Oh, attendance and numbers don't count. With your job laid out clearly, someone can keep you in check. Depending on your church organization, it can be a board, it can be elders, it can be a team of leaders, it can be other staff. Whomever it is that keeps you in check. A word of warning. The person who holds you accountable for these things should not be your spouse. Don't put that burden on them. In the future, we're going to talk about elders, deacons, board members, some kind of team or group of people who are not only there for financial decisions or large planning situations, but are also there to love you, protect you, and keep you working in the right gear. Thus, having a group of people that you can trust and submit to as they trust and submit to you. I know this pastor, and he's great at so many things, but there were a few things, mostly organizational, that he was really bad at. And his elders came to him and said, "Hey, you're really bad at some stuff, and you need to get some help." They need to be good at the things that you are bad at. So, because he submitted to their leadership as they submitted to his, they gave him a time frame and said, "You have to hire an executive pastor, and you have 90 days in which to do that. And if you don't do it, we're going to do it for you. Find who you need to accomplish these things. And he did. And that's the way that accountability in the church can work. Those are 5 of the reasons why you need a clear job description to clearly lay out the things for which you are responsible and those that you are not. Clarity, effectiveness, replication, boundaries, and accountability. Now, as kind of a preview of what we're going to talk about when we get into job description details, I want to share with you something that I've put into job descriptions that really seems to help. I realize it may not help at all, but I still like the idea. Okay, take all of the things that you do, list them out in detail, group them into 5, 6, 7 different groups. I wouldn't go more than 7. Get everything you do into one of those groups. For instance, if you have meeting with team leaders, then create a category that says leadership. If much of what you are doing has to do with things in the future, create a group called planning. These areas become your large-scale priorities. And one that I always insist is on that list is personal leadership and pastoral development. That includes reading, that includes research, that includes conferences, meetings with other pastors. Anything that has to do with you becoming better as a leader. Now, take those and assign a percentage value to them. What I mean is a percentage of the time that it takes for you to do those things, or a percentage of the time that you think it should take to do those things. And then make a pie chart. It's not going to be perfect, and things always come out of the blue. There's always the unexpected. By having your priorities shown visually, you can see where your time should go. And this, if done right, can really help with the tyranny of the urgent, which is a whole different lesson. Either you will rule your schedule, or your schedule will rule you. I would love to hear your comments about your job description. What's in it? What's not in it? What do you think should be in it? And who should create your job description? Leave us a comment. Also, subscribe so you do not miss anything that is coming soon. I did not learn about job descriptions in pastor school.